In late January of 1959, a group of 9 experienced ski hikers set out on an expedition into the northern Ural Mountains of Russia. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old student, and consisted of 7 men and 2 women, all skilled in winter trekking. Their ultimate goal was to reach the peak of Otorten Mountain, a journey that should have been challenging but achievable for a team of their caliber. However, they never completed their trek. The group vanished on the slopes of a mountain known ominously as Kholat Syakhl, which translates to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. This event would later become one of the most enduring and unsettling mysteries of the 20th century. The hikers were expected to send a telegram upon their return around February 12th. When no message arrived, their families grew concerned, and a search party was organized. On February 26th, searchers discovered the group's abandoned tent on the exposed slope of Kholat Syakhl. The tent was badly damaged, cut open from the inside, and most of the group's belongings were still inside. This discovery marked the beginning of a grim investigation. The scene was confusing and frightening, offering no immediate answers. Instead, it presented a series of bizarre clues that defied easy explanation, sparking decades of debate and speculation about what really happened on that frozen mountainside. The mystery of Dyatlov Pass endures because the known facts are so difficult to reconcile into a single coherent narrative. The investigation began with the discovery of the hikers' tent on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl. The location itself was unusual. It sat on an open, exposed incline, not in the sheltered forest about a mile down the slope. Strange choice for an experienced group led by Igor Dyatlov. The tent was partially collapsed, covered in snow, and had clearly been there for some time. Inside was most of their equipment: skis, warm clothing, boots, food supplies. They had left in a great hurry. Crucial evidence. The tent had been sliced open from the inside, cut with a sharp object, likely a knife. That implies an urgent exit. They didn't or couldn't use the normal entrance. This rules out a calm departure. Something terrifying happened. From the tent, a trail of footprints led toward the tree line. The tracks showed orderly movement, sometimes walking side by side. But many were barefoot, in only socks, or wearing a single shoe. The first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonyshenko, Yuri Doroshenko, were found at the forest edge, nearly a mile from the tent. They lay beneath a large cedar tree beside the remnants of a small fire, dressed only in their underwear. The cedar's branches were broken up to about 15 feet, as if someone had tried to climb it. 3 more bodies, including Igor Dyatlov, were found between the cedar and the tent, positioned like they were trying to return to camp. The hikers were not novices. They were well prepared for the harsh conditions of the Ural winter. Yet, they fled their shelter in the middle of the night, some without shoes or adequate clothing, into temperatures well below freezing. The autopsies conducted on the first 5 bodies found revealed that they had all died from hypothermia. The lack of adequate clothing and exposure to the extreme cold were the clear causes of death. However, the forensic examination also noted various minor injuries, such as scrapes and bruises. These could have been sustained as they moved through the dark and difficult terrain. There were no signs of fatal injuries on these first 5 individuals. The mystery deepened significantly 2 months later, in early May, when the remaining 4 bodies were discovered. They were found buried under more than 10 feet of snow in a ravine, not far from the cedar tree. These hikers were better dressed than the others, with some appearing to have taken clothes from their deceased comrades. But it was their injuries that baffled the investigators. Lyudmila Dubinina had massive chest trauma, with multiple broken ribs. Semyon Zolotaryov had similar crushing chest injuries. Alexander Kolovatov's neck was deformed. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had suffered a severe skull fracture. The medical examiner stated that the force required was immense, comparable to the impact of a car crash or a shock wave from an explosion. Crucially, these bodies showed very little external damage. It was as if they had been subjected to an incredible amount of pressure that crushed them internally without breaking the skin. This finding was extremely difficult to explain. Furthermore, Dubinina was found missing her tongue, missing her eyes, and missing parts of her face, though investigators attributed this to natural decomposition and scavenging by small animals in the wet environment of the ravine. Another strange clue emerged during the forensic analysis of the hikers' clothing. Some of the garments worn by the bodies found in the ravine showed low levels of beta radiation. The source of this radiation was never definitively identified. While some of the hikers had worked in facilities that handled radioactive materials, the levels found were not high enough to be lethal. This detail, however, fueled speculation about secret military involvement or a mysterious weapon. Together, the severe internal trauma, the missing soft tissues, and the presence of radiation created a complex forensic puzzle that simple explanations like hypothermia could not solve on their own. One of the most widely accepted and scientifically supported theories is that the hikers were victims of a slab avalanche. This type of avalanche occurs when a cohesive layer of snow slides off a weaker layer underneath. The theory suggests the hikers had inadvertently cut into the snowpack on the slope to set up their tent, destabilizing it. During the night, a slab of snow could have slid down and partially buried the tent. The sudden weight and pressure of the snow would have created a terrifying situation, trapping them inside, instilling a sense of immediate suffocation or being crushed. That explains why the hikers would cut their way out of the tent. If the entrance was blocked and the tent was collapsing, slashing through the canvas would have been the quickest escape. The panic of being buried alive would explain why they fled without stopping to gather their boots or warm clothing. Their primary instinct, get away from the perceived danger of the avalanche and reach what they believed was safer ground. The initial orderly retreat could have been an attempt to stay together. The avalanche theory also explains the severe internal injuries found on 4 bodies in the ravine. The force of a moving slab of snow is immense and can produce crushing pressure like the medical examiner described. The bodies may have been caught in the main path of the slide or fallen into the ravine, then been buried by subsequent snow and ice. The lack of external injuries fits compression by a broad mass of snow rather than a sharp, focused impact. However, the theory has problems, which is why Soviet investigators initially dismissed it. The slope where the tent was pitched was not steep, about 23 degrees. 23 degrees is generally low for a natural avalanche. The search party didn't report classic avalanche signs, such as a large debris field or a distinct fracture line in the snowpack above the tent. The footprints leading away from the tent seemed too orderly for a chaotic post-avalanche escape. These contradictions have led many to question whether a snowslide alone could account for all the evidence. Another natural explanation centers on a phenomenon known as katabatic wind. This is a type of drainage wind that carries high-density air from a higher elevation down a slope under the force of gravity. In mountainous regions, these winds can arise suddenly and reach hurricane-like speeds, accompanied by a dramatic drop in temperature. The theory posits that the Dyatlov group was caught off guard by an extremely powerful katabatic wind event. The intense force could have threatened to destroy their tent, creating a loud, terrifying noise. This sudden and violent weather event could have induced panic, leading the hikers to believe their tent was no longer safe. Fleeing the tent, even into the freezing night, might have seemed like the only option to avoid being buried or swept away. The disorienting effects of the wind combined with blowing snow, creating whiteout conditions, would have made it nearly impossible for them to find their way back. They would have quickly become separated and succumbed to hypothermia. This theory explains the apparent panic and the decision to abandon a seemingly secure shelter. However, this theory has a major weakness. It cannot account for the severe internal injuries found on the bodies in the ravine. Wind cannot generate the kind of focused, crushing force needed to break ribs and fracture a skull. Therefore, the katabatic wind theory is often seen as incomplete on its own. Some researchers have suggested a hybrid theory, where a katabatic wind forced the hikers to flee, and then, in the darkness and chaos, some of them accidentally fell into the ravine, sustaining their fatal injuries upon impact with the rocks and ice below. A more unusual but intriguing theory suggests that the hikers were victims of infrasound. Infrasound is low-frequency sound, below the normal limit of human hearing, which can be generated by strong winds moving over specific geographic formations. The area around Kholat Syakhl has a dome-like shape that could create a powerful vortex street. This phenomenon can produce intense levels of infrasound. While humans cannot hear it, infrasound can have profound physiological and psychological effects, including feelings of intense anxiety, dread, overwhelming panic. The resulting physical sensations and irrational fear could have driven the group mad, causing them to believe they were in grave danger. This would explain their bizarre behavior, cutting their way out of the tent, fleeing into the snow without proper gear, acting in a completely illogical manner. However, much like the katabatic wind theory, the infrasound explanation falls short when it comes to the physical evidence of the injuries. Infrasound can cause panic, but it cannot break bones or crush a person's chest. For this theory to be complete, it must be combined with another event. Perhaps panic led some to fall into the ravine. Given the context of the Cold War, it is not surprising that one of the most persistent theories involves secret military activity. The Soviet Union conducted numerous weapons tests in remote areas like the Ural Mountains. This theory suggests the hikers accidentally stumbled into the vicinity of a secret test of a parachute mine, a concussion weapon, some other form of ordnance. An explosion from such a weapon could produce a powerful shock wave, which would explain the severe internal injuries without significant external wounds. The bright flash and deafening sound of a detonation would also provide a terrifying reason for the hikers to flee their tent. A military weapon could certainly produce the immense force needed for the crushing injuries. It could also explain the traces of radiation found on some of the clothing, as many Soviet-era weapons involved radioactive components or produced radioactive fallout. However, the military theory suffers from a significant lack of direct evidence. Despite extensive research, no declassified documents or whistleblower testimonies have ever surfaced to confirm a test at that place and time. While other hikers reported strange orange spheres in the sky, these sightings are not definitively linked to the Dyatlov incident. The radiation levels found were very low and could be explained by other sources, such as contamination from the hikers' prior work. Ultimately, the military test theory relies heavily on speculation and circumstantial evidence. It provides a compelling narrative, but without concrete proof. One of the greatest challenges in solving the Dyatlov Pass mystery is the significant amount of missing or incomplete evidence. The investigation was conducted in 1959 without modern forensic techniques on a vast snowy mountainside. Evidence was likely lost or contaminated. Searchers may have disturbed crucial clues. Many documents were classified. Available reports are brief. Scene photographs are grainy. Final images are indistinct and contested. Without complete, reliable data, we can't definitively prove or disprove any single theory. After carefully weighing the evidence, the most plausible explanation appears to be a combination of natural events, a small delayed slab avalanche as the initial trigger.